Audio rolling. Welcome back. Welcome back to the Detroit is Different podcast studios. And today I have a special guest. And we put a lot of stuff together. But the number one thing I think that we are putting together that gathers people is food and this whole thing, right?
Yes.
So this young lady has actually helped make everything is in order. So she's helping all you food entrepreneurs, people getting in the food business, that person with a good recipe and so much more, advocating between so many things. So like the growers, people that make the food, people that I'm guessing also work with the meats, people that work with the desserts and so much more. Ederique, how are you today?
I'm great. How are you?
Everything is good as we're getting ready for this collard green cook-off because people in Detroit take food
seriously, very seriously.
Yes. Yes, food is like the number one thing people are always asking. They'd be like, all right. I guess I can come, but what food is going to be there?
Right. Who making a potato salad?
Yes, who's making a potato salad? What's going on with cornbread?
Right. Who made the pound cake?
Exactly. And then more so than who, what food gonna be there when you in a long meeting or something like that. It determines how people make their whole plans for the day.
Absolutely. Especially when it comes to those ancestral foods, right? Those are really, really important to us and really important to our culture. So, those are taken extra seriously.
All right, so you have a different relationship with this whole thing because you've gone through like the arc on a lot of ways. So let's start this whole backstory. Like usual, Detroit is different. Yo, peoples.
Yeah.
How did they come to the city of Detroit?
So actually, I was the first to come to the city of Detroit.
You were first?
I am. I am from Louisiana.
Okay. Yep. I knew you had them roots down there. Another place where food is, big.
Yeah. Yeah. So, born and raised in Louisiana.
Whereabouts?
Right in between New Orleans and Baton Rouge. It's a little town called Wallace, Louisiana.
Okay.
What Wallace, I guess, would be most known for is the Whitney Plantation. The Whitney Plantation is one of the only plantations in the country that is dedicated to telling the lives of the enslaved people.
Interesting. All right. So let's get into a lot of stories because you're from the boot, as they say.
Yep.
All right. And Louisiana, it's some flavors of people here, but not a whole lot. But it still like kind of connects. What was the first thing your family and friends said when it's like, yo, I'm going to Detroit? What was the take?
Well, I came after college.
Okay.
So it was like, okay, moving up to, work. I was really considering going and getting my MBA from the University of Michigan. But they were definitely like, it's a lot different up north than it is in the South. And from my experience, particularly, I was in like restaurant and food service management. That's really how I started my career. I got my bachelor's in business management because I wanted to be a chef and own my own restaurant. So I thought, well, let me go and I need to know how to run a business. So let me get my degree in business management, do that, and then I can always go back and get my degree in culinary. And so that's what I did. So managing, at 22 years old, I had 60 union employees.
Wow.
So my experience was that when people would ask, like, oh, how's Detroit? And I would say, or how's the weather? And I would say, well, the people are colder than the weather.
Hilarious.
Because that was my experience. But it's definitely a lot coming from being born and raised in the South. And that Southern hospitality is just kind of flowing through everything and everybody. But so those first few years were rough for me. But I would say that what I tell people now is that, Detroit has this Southern hospitality that you wouldn't think to find here.
And that's exactly where I was going to go. So now I'm going to go into your family and your people. So was restauranting and cooking, was that like just a part of your family? What was the connection?
So, yes, like everybody, and in my experience, everybody in South Louisiana knew how to cook. Everybody cooked. My mom, my dad, my grandfather was actually a cook in World War II. My mom's mom, so my maternal grandmother, was a like a maid and a housekeeper for wealthy white family in New Orleans. My dad's parents cooked, who then taught him and his brothers and sisters how to cook. So definitely, and my grandfather was also a farmer. So he had 3 farms. We basically lived off the land. So it was just something that everybody did. So as I'm, watching cooking shows growing up, I didn't think that it was anything different than what everybody, like, I didn't think there was a difference in like me being in the kitchen with my mom or me watching cooking shows than like anything else. Definitely didn't think that it was something that I could do and make money doing until there was a famous chef who came and like cooked at my high school, made this whole lunch. And it was when I realized, oh, I can like cook and make money doing it. Like I can actually do this for a living. Because before I discovered that, I was going to go in a whole different direction with my career. But once I discovered that, I realized, oh, if this is something that I can actually do and make money doing and make a living doing, then yeah, that's what I want to do.
And New Orleans is an amazing city. I definitely think post Katrina, much has changed. As events like that can change the culture of many places. But one of the things that always stands out in New Orleans is the hospitality in of the service and the food industry. Like, New Orleans is one of those places where the even in a place where you wouldn't expect service to be top notch
Absolutely.
is going to be catered to a certain way. And I think that Detroit, because this is more of a blue collar city, it's a little bit different how people function. So I can only imagine what that was like at a young age coming here.
Yeah.
And in that era, just like the difference of flow
Yeah.
from what you saw.
Yeah. Especially, I came here in '02. So I want to say Kwame became mayor in '03, '04, or something like that. And to see, he was 30 years old. Like, I still remember this. He was 30 years old. Like, he at the club, earrings in his ear. And so Detroit was definitely different. And going through all of that, the bankruptcy, like things like that. But also, what I tell people now is that whatever you're into, you will find your community here in Detroit. And it really is like that. Mamba, who's the co-owner of Baba Fair, he said, I think we were doing an interview, and he said that Detroit is like a village, right? And like sometimes it may be a little difficult to get in that village, right, for people to kind of trust you and wrap their arm around you. But once they do, like, you are in.
And that's kind of why Detroit is different exists, because like I always say, this is such a cliquish town for many reasons. And some of it goes back to a lot of the safety mechanisms and things, but just period. It's like that. But when you're in, you're usually there.
Yes.
But it takes a while to get in because some of the people have been here for 6, 7 generations,
Absolutely.
and they're always tying you to like classic questions like, what high school you go to? Because they're
Exactly.
trying to like see, all right, who else they know, and then get on the phone like, all right,
Right.
you know.
What side of town you from? Like all of those things. So, in those years, I've definitely, like I said, the first several years were really rough because I didn't have that community. Hadn't established that, especially when I'm in a position, of like management position, right? So my employees that are people that may have been around the same age as me or look like me, they were my employees. I couldn't fraternize with them. So it was hard really finding that like community and finding people that I could relate to. And then over time, eventually that's what happened. And so, yeah, I do feel like I have a community, and sometimes people that don't know me are like, you really not from Detroit? I'm like, no, because I have been like kind of accepted into these communities, which is a beautiful thing. And so once my mom and my sister's kids moved up here 6 years ago, and my mom even said, and this is her first time living outside of Louisiana, she said that Detroit feels like home. Like it feels like, like she's never met someone that wasn't friendly or wasn't like kind. And so that really makes me really happy that she doesn't feel out of place here, and that she feels like she has community here too.
Okay, so in this journey, restaurant management here in the D, Food matters. This is an eating type of place. So with that, you jumping in at a young age, and these are the other dynamics. People talk about the differences in culture in a lot of things, but age plays a big role. When you're the youngest, when you're managing people older than you, as I was telling my kid sister, it's a different dynamic. Shout out to the Michigan Citizen. I remember my first day being a manager over there. It was like two people that stood up and quit immediately. Like, I can't work with nobody younger than me. And it's like, hey, I can't make these rules up, but that's the flow. How did you adjust to that? Because I know school is school. You know what I'm saying? School will say what's on the book and how people should respond and how things function.
Yep. And that's the thing. School is going to teach you, and the book is going to teach you best case scenario, right? And it's going to show you perfect world.
Yes.
But we all know the world is not perfect, right? And especially not only going from, again, the school to now real life, but also going from the South to now the North, where I don't have any family, I don't have any friends. So there was a huge adjustment. And I would say my first probably 2 years at least, I was going home crying many a days because I just didn't understand why. I was like, why do these people hate me? Why are they such against me? Because even when I did an internship in college with the dining services at our college, at the college I went to. And it was like managing, all these different, I have different locations and stuff on the university campus. So the Chick-fil-A's and the Burger King, but also just regular student dining, catering, right? So I got a hand in all of these different things, but the culture is different. So I was kind of used to that, like, culture. We all work together. We're all, still very hospitable, very Southern. And then going to like, okay, full time, this is my job as a manager, and really having a rude awakening. It was a rude awakening, I would say. And someone told me something that still sticks to me to this day. Is when I would go home and I'm like, I don't understand why they're just so against me. Like, why, why do they hate me? I just felt like it was so personal. And she told me, people are not against you. They're just for themselves. And that just put everything in perspective that, one, it's not personal. So don't take it that way. And it's a good thing to understand just as you move through life in a way that gives people grace. And for you not to take such things such to heart and realize, like, it is not you personally, but in essence, everyone is selfish in our own way. And so sometimes that doesn't feel good to the person on the receiving end of it, but it's not personal.
I definitely follow where you're coming from with that, and you learn that more, I believe, or at least I've learned that more, and I'd assume others do, when you sit in management or leadership positions. So sometimes from the outside in, you think, like when you were a kid and you were like, oh man, when I grow up, I'm gonna watch cartoons all day, eat the cereal I want, and da 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 da. And it's like, yes, that's the perspective, the child to adult. When you end up thrusted into leadership positions, yes, you're making a lot more decisions, but it comes with the responsibility and accountability of all these other factors. And back to like what you say, people are individuals, individualistic, self-interested, and that's natural.
Yep.
And in a leadership position, you have to be not only understanding of my point of view, everybody's point of view.
Absolutely.
And then even the other people connecting to something. So when people think of like a business, like, I've been that tougher to work with food service employee, quick service employee at a Burger King or a Taco Bell. So like, I would know when I'm working at Burger King, my 10th grade year, okay, my shift's over with at 10, So my manager's looking to get some of those nightly tasks done for the people that,
Come in the
so
morning.
that you
Yep.
can like cut hours of,
Yep.
work with a skeleton crew and everything.
Yep.
So I'm timing what I need to do so I can get off and just kind of ice the clock as much as I possibly can. And we're having this tug of war all the time. And this is me, Kari, but Burger King days. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Whereas the manager's thinking, look, we need this place clean. I don't want my late night employees, taking 20 minutes to work a Whopper because I assume it's only going to be 3 of us. If they
Right.
can if they can clean now, then late night don't have to worry about cleaning and they'll do like a slap shot job of it. And then the people that come in the morning, it's already ready and active.
Right.
So we're playing these factors of
absolutely.
thinking of the morning crew, the night crew, me trying to get home and get back to playing. I mean, I don't know at the time, talk to my girlfriend and play Crash Bandicoot or something. Who knows? You know what I'm saying? But this is what's my perspective versus my manager, Frank's perspective. You know.
And it, again, particularly because I'm not from Detroit, so understanding the history of all of that is, and particularly, when dealing with a union and having 60 union employees when I'm 22 years old, this was my first time ever really even hearing about a union. But it also then taught me, like, it made me really also think about the history of unions, why they're needed, why they're necessary, and the fact that I'm also at the end of the day, I was a middleman. I'm working for a management company that was hired by the entity or the organization. So now it's the organization, it's me, the management company, and then it's my employees, and that have 3 different interests. We
Yes.
should all be, of course, serving the same client, and we are, but the interest in, I guess, what's important to us are all different. And having to manage that, and understanding that I got to manage, of course, what the client wants, or else we'll lose this contract. But, like, I'm not going to have a contract if I don't have employees.
Yeah.
And more than anything, that trust and that respect is super important to me. And it was just things that, again, it's all thinking about, like, everyone's kind of their interest. For example, as management, we weren't allowed to do union work, right? So if my employee was running behind on doing something, for me, I'm just like, well, I'm going to get in and help you so we can, get whatever we needed to get done. But
No
that wasn't
bets.
exactly, that wasn't, and so we didn't have, it wasn't too crazy, right? Where some employees would be like, all right, hey, look, y'all know I'm not, like, this isn't because I'm trying to take union work. I just want all of us to get out of here on time, right? And so some people are like, okay, cool. But at the end of the day, if they were ever mad or didn't, they'd be like, they're going to tell the union because management is doing union work. I'm taking work against, taking work away from the union. So it was just like things like that where it's like, do we have to do this?
And it becomes a to-do. So from that position, where do you end up going in the food journey?
So after that, I actually got out of management, and
How long were you there?
I was in management. So managed my first restaurant management job was I managed Bob Evans. I was a
Okay.
manager for Bob Evans
How long?
for a year, and then I left there. They was actually about to promote me, and I was like, "You gonna promote me to working all nights for just another $1,000 a year? No, thank you. That don't make sense to me."
Yeah, different flow. And then you dealing with me trying to
You know what I'm saying?
trying to get off the clock on
Right.
nothing.
So
clean
I started working for a food service management company, and I worked for that management company for about 5 years.
Okay.
And then I left there, and I actually started working for Cisco, the food service distributor.
Interesting.
Yep, and I was at Cisco for 9 years.
So people get an understanding of this. So from management of a restaurant over to Cisco, which services a lot of the foods to places. I was a truck driver as well at one point in time.
All right, so you know.
how food gets delivered, which is a whole nother logistical perspective. So when I drove for Dairy Fresh Foods for a while. So
right,
I
yes.
was dropping, like we go to Mexican Village, Xochimilco's, Armando's, and I'm dropping, weekly 40 pounds of like maybe 40 pounds of mustard cheese stacks, like 7 of them or something. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like half a pallet. But knowing when the order's supposed to come, what time the order's supposed to come, where to unload, where to stock it, and then this is the other dynamic. Like, how far will the driver go into, and this is back to people's and relationships. If I was cool with the restaurant manager, yeah, man, I'll go all the way in the freezer. If I don't like the restaurant manager,
You picking this up off the curb. Like, you lucky I even get it through your back door.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so I was the sales rep. So again, managing relationships. It was all about managing relationships and really taught me the back end of, again, I know how to manage a restaurant. I know how to create a P&L, how to manage it, how to manage my labor, like all of the cost, all of those things as it relates to actually running and owning a restaurant, right? Which is what the experience I wanted, because if this is what I wanted to ultimately do, let me get in it and make sure, like once I'm actually in it, that this is still something that I want to do. And then when I started working for Cisco, it was learning the back end of food. And it really, what Cisco really taught me was how to be a consultant, actually. Because, there's Cisco, there's GFS, there's US Foods, there's all these different food services, but basically selling the same products, right? Like, I would joke and say, I sell green beans. At the end of the day, you can either get them green beans from me, GFS, US Foods, whoever. But what's going to be the difference in between the green beans that I sell you and somebody else? It's not the actual product, it's what I can do for you. So yes, I can sell you this green beans, but I can also talk to you about how do we reduce your cost? How do we increase your revenue? How do we redesign your menu so that your most profitable items are the ones that you're selling the most? That's what Cisco really taught me, was more so how to be a business partner with my clients and my accounts, more than it was just about, like, again, selling the same case of green beans that you could get from anywhere.
so in this also would introduce you to so many more of the food businesses throughout the footprint. And
Absolutely.
different types. So like it can be as small as like that deli that's in the front of a office building to I don't know, like one of the constituents of like those senior buildings off Jefferson where you feeding food to
Yep.
hundreds of people a day,
Yep.
and everything in between, and meeting a lot more of that network, and also the business people. That's the other thing. Like sometimes the person that owns the restaurant and does the business for the restaurant, that's not the person you're thinking of usually, like when you open the magazine and think, oh, this is that restaurateur.
Right. Yeah. And for me, it was a couple of things. One, I had all healthcare and school accounts. So I had nursing homes, the convalescence home on the boulevard.
Okay.
I had hospitals. I also had K through 12 schools as well as colleges and universities. Like Wayne State was my account for a while. So what it also allowed me to do was get familiar and comfortable with the city of Detroit, because they put the only black woman in sales, right, in Detroit. I wasn't even living in the city, but there was like, oh, because other people would be like, oh, well, I don't feel comfortable going to this part of the city. They was like, oh, she gonna get all that, the areas that other people didn't feel comfortable going. I'm like, I'm not even from here. Like, I got to map quest all this stuff, but it definitely made me got me more familiar with the different areas of the city, the different neighborhoods, how to get from here to there. And it also started to build some of those relationships with people in the city. So I have some former clients of Cisco. I left Cisco 8-9 years ago, who I still talk to this day, who are now still at another, school. And now I have a contract with that school to do, things, of course, outside of what, I did at Cisco. But how those relationships, like I formed some of those relationships and kept and maintained some of those relationships that now they can even still be beneficial.
So from there, where do you go? How do you end up advocating so much for this like
Yeah.
budding entrepreneurship lens? Like what was the perspective? What was
So it really did start with Cisco, and again, even before that, right? Like going to school for business management, actually applying it and doing it every day. Going to Cisco, them kind of teaching me how to really be a consultant, and also how to start being an advocate, because I had K through 12 schools. I had, like healthcare accounts. A part of that was understanding, again, the needs of my customers and my clients, and thinking and like having to advocate for the extra 10 cents a meal, or universal free lunch. So like really getting into, I'm not just selling you a case screen, but I understand what you're up against. I understand what's important, and then being your partner and advocating for those things, whether it's free lunch or more money going towards this school program, or money going towards being able to purchase locally grown, like fruits and vegetables, because schools, they want to support that, but they're on such tight budgets that the government doesn't always make them easy to do that. So advocating for policies that allow for that. So that's where kind of the advocacy started. And then when I actually started, I left Cisco to do more work in the community because I was looking to start a restaurant in the city of Detroit. And I did not want to, one, have a business in a neighborhood and I not be a resident of the city. I think that was really, it would have been really exploitative, and I did not want to do that. That's not who I am. But I also wanted to make sure that, the people that I'm literally asking to come and support my restaurant, come and buy stuff so that I could sustain, they knew who I was and they were comfortable. And I wasn't like living in the suburbs, but I got this restaurant in the city.
Yeah.
That's just not. So I left and moved into the city, started working in community. So I started working with Food Lab Detroit. And at the time, that was really the only organization that was, or small business support organization that was dedicated to food entrepreneurs and food businesses. We do have a really strong and a really robust small business ecosystem here in the city of Detroit. But specifically for food, that was really only one resource. So the work that I was doing was connecting with these entrepreneurs and these businesses and helping to provide them with resources and tools, and at the same time realizing how much of a gap there still was for support in that area. And that's what led me to actually starting my consulting agency, because I had all of this experience, all this education, I was a resource in myself because I had been through where basically all of these food entrepreneurs were trying to get to and understand. I knew how to create a P&L system because I had done it. Whereas you have somebody who's a retired teacher or, worked for the one of the big three. They don't, this is new to them.
Yeah.
And so being able to utilize all the experiences that I had to help someone else start a business, grow their business, scale their business, to provide whether it's generational wealth or to just pay their kids college tuition or to not have to live paycheck to paycheck, it just felt like this is why I did all of those things. This is why I'm here.
And let me say this too, as a Walsh grad and with masters in business and all of that, and also coming from community college, Henry Ford Community College. When I was in my Henry Ford Community College class, just intro to business class that I went through, of the 40 students in there, 25 of them was like, I'm going to be a millionaire. And those 25 was like, I'm going to own a bar and restaurant. Bars and restaurants, it's a tough business, and it's tougher than watching a couple episodes of Bar Rescue or something like that. And let me tell you why I believe from the outside in, restaurants are so tough. Because the lens we put on, like back with my music, like we approach restaurants from a consumer's perspective. And the way you make money is by making a sale and making a profit. The first thing you're going to do, like when you cook at the house, you're saving money because it's not as much as, going out to eat, but you're not thinking to yourself like, okay, I need a system when I make my chicken
Mac
stir
and cheese,
fry.
right.
Like I need to know how much of each ingredient is in this so that I know how much I'm spending on this so I can sufficiently price it.
Correct.
Most of the people I know that are in restaurants usually think from the lens of like, well, I gotta sell my sandwich for $5 because everybody else selling their sandwich for $5,
Right.
but my sandwich gonna be better because I'm gonna put some special ingredients in it.
Right.
And then now your sandwich costs $3.25 to
Right.
make. You got staff.
Yep.
You got to make,
Yep.
and then
Overhead.
it's like,
Yep.
okay, you got so many ingredients on the sandwich. It takes you like 7 minutes to make the sandwich. So now, even at best case scenario with the transaction of everything, you may be only able to make 8 sandwiches in 1 hour.
Right.
So that's $40 in of gross profit. Of
Right.
those $40 in
Revenue,
gross
yep.
profit, now you got to look at actually what's net profit, just raw, and that's just off of the materials alone.
Yep.
It starts getting to the point where you look up, and it is very easy to be extremely busy in a restaurant, extremely known. Like everybody loves and talks about your restaurant, but hemorrhaging money.
Yep. All day, every day. Right now, so in a perfect world, and this is how we were taught, in a perfect world, a restaurant profits 10%. 10%. So that means you could bring in $1,000, right? That day, that's your revenue, and what you actually gonna put in the bank is $100. So you did all
Yes.
that work to basically get 10 cents on the dollar. The reality of what's happening now is that restaurants are really profiting about 5 to 7%. So you're talking about 5 cents on the dollar.
And I forgot this other key variable about that. The other thing is the prices aren't fixed. That you love that person is, a great Cisco rep or whatever, but salmon fluctuates, shrimp fluctuates, chicken fluctuates. We're seeing vegetables fluctuate now. Even the salt and the pepper fluctuates. It's not like buying AA batteries, which that will fluctuate, but not like I mean, like meaning you can
food.
buy 10 pounds of something on Tuesday and on Wednesday.
It's a different price, absolutely. And the thing is, and every time the price of the food fluctuate, the price of the customer don't fluctuate. Like we have to eat that.
Yeah.
And so yeah, we can make incremental changes over time and say, okay, in 6 months I need to raise to this, or in 1 year I need to raise to that. But all the while that stuff is fluctuating, it's the restaurateur that is eating that. And then even when it comes to you talking about really wanting to also have a business that is equitable. Not just you making money, but you want to make sure your employees are being treated well. They're making money, but they're also able to have a sustainable life. So now you're talking about benefits, which is also unheard of in the restaurant industry. It is the only industry where you can be a full-time employee, you can be a career server, a career bartender, and you have no paid time off. You have no medical benefits. Like where else would you go and work 40 hours a week and you don't even have insurance?
Probably more than that, but
Right.
yes.
So, there's so now you have these people that cannot take time off because they won't get paid. They're also not getting paid all that well because with only, profiting 5 to 7%, where do I even get the money to be able to, right, pay you well? And if I want to do those things, I want to purchase locally from my local farmer so that I can continue to support the ecosystem. Well, those organic, beautiful, huge collard greens from Mama Jerry's over Oakland Avenue, it's a lot more expensive than getting it off the Cisco truck because Cisco got, they can buy in volume, right?
Yeah.
So, but I want to support my local farmers, so that's going to increase either I'm going to eat it or I'm going to have to pass it along to the customer. I want to pay my server $15 an hour to make sure that they can support their families. Again, I got to either eat it or I got to pass it along to the customer. So, I want to compost, right? But like all those things cost. But if I want to actually have a business and do it right and treat everyone in the ecosystem well and equitably and continue to support that ecosystem, there's cost associated with that.
Yeah, and I just, I definitely don't want to scare anybody, but I want people to know that it gets real, and so many people have the passion for this. Some great spaces, some great thinkers, and that's why so many business models are changing. I mean, we're to the point now where even fast food places are closing down just due to some of the shifts since COVID, the door dashing, and then that's the other thing, high turnover. I mean, staff may quit mid shift and be like, "Psh, I'm about to pick up some Uber."
Yep.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And now you're stuck.
Yep. They have
with
options
what you do.
now. Yep. And the pandemic really also taught us that, people that have been in this industry for a while, we knew it. We had been screaming at the top of our lungs for the longest time that it's not equitable and something needs to change. But when the pandemic happened and those hospitality workers realized, like, I don't have to live like this. I don't have to kill myself for a job that is not paying well, that is really hard on my body. I can go do something else and have a much more fulfilling life. They left and never came back. And so there's a huge shortage in the industry, which means if you think about economics and supply and demand, that means now we have to pay more for people that may not even be all that great, but we need something, and then we have to pay more for it. it. And so that's really why I do what I do. That's why I teach the classes for food entrepreneurs and I have these workshops and I do one-on-one coaching is because let me help you utilize my experience to make sure that you, one, have a strong foundation, but you understand exactly what you're getting into. I'm not trying to scare you. I just want to make sure that you understand and you can make an informed decision for yourself instead of getting in too deep early on and now you're stuck because you got $300,000 in loans.
Yeah.
You know, you got this building, you got these people that you're now responsible for because they're your employees, and you like, there's no other way out except for me to just try to keep going, but it's almost like you're on this hamster wheel because you're not moving forward because you don't have the knowledge to understand what it means.
And this is one of my tried true rules in business too. And similar to like being an entertainer, it's very true in restaurants. Other people ain't in business to see your business win. So meaning that you have to. I'm a firm believer, just even in every lesson I've learned from my family in business, is that you need competitive advantages and know what those competitive advantages
Absolutely.
are. So you may think like when that salesperson comes in with the brand new fridge, the brand new freezer, the smart countertops and stuff like that, and it's like, oh man, you'll be the premier this. Then you got to think to yourself, okay, what's the systems? How does this get to my bottom line?
Yep.
How does this function? You sign that lease and it's like, oh man, this is a 10-year lease, so I don't mind bringing in this extra equipment. It's like, do you really want to load that equipment into this place that you're leasing out?
Exactly.
What's going to be the relationship with this place? Because
Yep.
at the end of the day, if this stove and refrigerator and bar taps end up stuck in this place,
And something like a reach-in fridge or cooler might be easy to get out, but what about that $40,000 hood that you just installed, right?
Yeah.
That HVAC system that you put in, like you can't take the windows, you can't take that out. Now it belongs to that landlord, but you paid for it.
and it's many places that we've seen where landlords have been amazing recipients of like great restaurant spaces from what was left behind from last time.
Yep.
Of a person that's like, man, you put all that money and you didn't own it, man. At least the way it was set up and it
Yep.
was a deal and the person sold me and da da da. And it's like, and it happens to the best.
Exactly.
So I'm not saying like this is not to disparage anybody
Right, no.
that's saying something. So in this food lab, you spoke of food lab. When I think of food lab, I think of Jess and the way Jess used to like advocate for it all the time. Shout out Jess and Donnie. And it's not that long ago, but about like 10, 11 years ago, and even to this day, it was such a need for more commercial kitchens because there were so many more food entrepreneurs.
Yes.
This was like in a wave of the pop-ups and
Yep.
some of where we're at with food trucks now, and getting that access to it because commercial kitchens and making sure food is safe. And that's the other thing with insurance and safety, big time comes into play with food. And you're serving in this capacity. A lot of those people in those first iterations, I remember that I met from Food Lab are just really creative, passionate people that know food, not necessarily business people.
Correct.
They're really artists, culinary art.
And that's the thing. I mean, what I've witnessed and also been in discussion with many people, particularly in those early food lab days, was that you saw this, the surgence of people that got into food businesses out of necessity. It happened around the housing crash and the bankruptcy because it is such a low barrier to entry, right? They could sell plates out of their front door or sell pies out of their trunk or, things like that. And so it's a low barrier to entry. It's an easy way to make a couple dollars, to get a bill paid, to do things like that. And so that's why you had so many people that get into it. And a lot of times it's underground, right? But those people were seeing success and then really wanted to then become above ground and be legal businesses. And really, instead of it just being something that they did, again, selling a couple plates out of the front, they were like, I want a food truck. I want to retire or leave this job and be able to do it for myself. And that's where you found the need for more commercial kitchens. You also found a need for those resources like Food Lab provided to say, I'm going to help, we can help you get to where you need to go. Because if not, you're literally, I mean, there's so much, and food is so nuanced because it's perishable, because of all these, regulations and things like that, that yes, it's, I would say it is a low barrier to entry, but it's also a low barrier to exit too.
Yeah,
Once you really
I
get
like
into
that.
it.
I
So
like that analogy.
so Food Lab was very instrumental in like providing those resources. And even now, after the pandemic, I really wondered, are people going to really be like trying to get into starting their own food business and things like that? And we saw that, I was still getting calls of, "E, you teaching this class? Hey, E, can I get, what can I do about this? Can you find this information for me?" That I was like, oh, they're definitely still here. So my resources are definitely still necessary. And I'm hearing from small business support organizations saying that 50 to 60% of the the people that's coming to them for assistance are food entrepreneurs. That's a lot
Yeah.
when you really think about it. So there is certainly still a need for commercial kitchens. There are a lot that have come online, and there was never a resource for finding those. People kind of like either, knew somebody or just asked around. So I did put all the list of commercial kitchens in the Metro Detroit area on the Eastern Market website so that people could at least know where they are and how to reach out to them and contact them. But also I also host a class on how to operate in a commercial kitchen, because you can go and go, all right, I want to be legal, so I need to get licensed. Let me get in a commercial kitchen. But do you know how to fill up a 3 compartment sink? Do you know how to check your sanitizer, to make sure it's the right parts per million? Do you understand what it feels like to work in a shared commercial kitchen space with other food businesses? And, it's not just food safety that's important, but also understanding how that affects other people in this space as well. So I even teach that class again to try to, at every stage, whether you are aspiring, whether you've started your business, you want to grow your business, there's resources for you so you're not doing this by yourself and making mistakes that really we can't afford to make. That's the thing, like we cannot afford to fail. And so if we can have, if they can, people can have the resources and they follow those, then it lessens the chance for them to fail, because at the end of the day, we can't afford to in the first place.
So, so with this, you in the kitchen now, as you've taken on more advocacy, tried meals from everybody around town, I'm guessing. Where did your shift go in the timing for what you want to do with food in your restaurant and catering and serving folks yourself?
Yeah, so it definitely, like I said, I mean, at 17 is when I realized like I want to be a chef at my own restaurant. Working through the industry, there were definitely times where I was like, absolutely not. I don't want to do this.
Hilarious.
This is crazy. Like, no. And then, you go through again, like, well, maybe it's not out of reach, right? Maybe I can start. And I started working towards that. And the pandemic happened. And then it's really, it's again, looking at, I wasn't, at least I wasn't naive. Like I knew exactly what I was
Yeah.
getting into. I knew it was long nights. I knew it was going to wear on my body. I knew it was going to be broke, more than anything. And putting in like so much time and energy into this one thing. And I was like, okay with that. Like, all right, like but I know what I'm getting myself into. I'm not naive at all. And then as I thought about more, especially the pandemic and stepping away from it and seeing I don't have to live this life in order to have a fulfilling life and do what is that I love to do. And it was really the pandemic that made me really step back and go, how can I still do this in a way that makes sense for me, in the life that I want to live, and in a way that is going to continue to help people. Because when I was working at Food Lab and then realizing, well, if I do have my own restaurant, I'm not going to be able to help these
Do
people
this.
anymore,
Yeah.
right? It's going to be me like managing my space. And I kept trying to think of, is there a way that I still could do it inside the confines of like my four walls of my restaurant? And, I was thinking about, okay, I think might be able to do this. The reality is that I couldn't. And so, the pandemic happened and just realizing, especially as I got older, and I turned 40 3 years ago, and it hit different, right? They say like when you turn 40, it's different. And it really was like this awakening of why why do you want to kill yourself at this time? Like, I'm not 30 no more. I'm not 35 anymore. And then, starting this restaurant after I turn 40 and knowing how hard it's going to be on my body and my mental and my emotions
Yeah.
and my finances, is that where I really want it to be? And I said, no, it's not.
And and it's definitely you have some experience and some game, and definitely are passionate about giving it, because Lord knows I know I walked up on her and I was like, yo, I need some help with this, and she was like, all right, give you a couple minutes, you can do this, 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 and this, and I was like, that's what I need. So you're definitely willing and present, and that is a heck of an asset, and I'm sure someone else would step into that role, but it wouldn't be you with the diverse nuanced experience, because back to like the book, you've been the person selling on
Right.
behalf of the distributor, because a lot of smaller businesses say, yo, I don't even want to drop off, I'm gonna just go get the stuff
Right.
myself,
Restaurant Depot.
which
Absolutely.
which is a method too, but you need to at least you need to explore all options on the table so you can know what best works for you. Which leads to another question. Detroit's, what would you say the state of restaurants, because some of those restaurants haven't come back post pandemic, or are in different hours and things, or still getting footing.
Yeah.
I know one of my favorite restaurants in Hamtramck, man, for Mediterranean food, they're going, like, things
Yeah.
have changed.
A lot.
In that, some of it may be people just like, okay, I was getting out the game anyway. Some of it may be like, okay, this was different. Dining was becoming more of a thing
Yeah.
throughout. What's the pulse, and what's the response you think of, not the people that are trying to get in restaurants? What would you say like the Detroit eater is right now? The person going out, and I mean, I'm one of them too. You're one of them, but
Yeah.
where's the pulse you think of the general public for trying the new spots and things like that? I think it was like a Moroccan spot I heard about. Like, I want to check that out, but
Yeah. It's really difficult because whenever I experience something, I experience it like I can see it from the perspective of the owner. I see it from the perspective of the employer or the employee, and I see it from the perspective of the consumer.
yeah,
It's hard for me to walk in a place and not look at it from all those angles. And I think that in order to have compassion and grace and understanding, it's important to see it from all those different angles. So, for like the restaurant owner, it's difficult because again,
the margins.
the costs are continuing to rise. I mean, when you go to I don't have children. It's just me. And I can spend $100 on groceries just for me for 1 week, and I meal prep. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm very like, okay, this, and I'm like, so if we go to the grocery store, can you imagine what these restaurateurs are paying for
Yeah.
anything, commodities, or it could be, again, they want to support or have relationships with local farmers. But even climate change is affecting the crops. That's going to affect the cost.
Yeah.
And you have to be cognizant of all those things because it's going to affect whether you run a special on something, whether you remove something from the menu temporarily, whether you change, like it affects so much. And so you're not only dealing with these rising costs in your ingredients in your product, but then you can't find the labor to actually produce it, especially the labor that the talent that you need. So now again, do you cut your hours? Do you go down and maybe take out only, or you say, okay, instead of being open 5 days, it's 4 days, but that's also days or hours that you're missing of revenue that you need to be able to keep the lights on and and continuing to survive and sustain. So it's definitely really difficult on the restaurateur, and trying to figure out how do we do this in a way that the customer's still going to leave happy and they're going to come back and they're going to tell other people, right? I would say the hospitality, one of the things that is, I would definitely say a hot topic and even maybe a sore spot in the city right now is customer service.
I was gonna lean into that, but
Yeah.
pick up, and then I got my 2 cents.
So I'm working on figuring out how we not just talk about that, but we work on improving that, or providing some kind of resources so that we can improve on our customer service across the restaurants and food service spaces in the city. You know, and then as a consumer, why would I pay what I know is necessary to pay, right? In order, again, for the farmer to be paid correctly, the employee to be paid correctly, like all of those things, and I'm paying top dollar for something, but then my customer service is trash. But again, knowing that it's just hard to find good help, so like
And that's that right there. I
it's
think is
hard.
one of the, and then culturally, like you from the boot.
Yep.
You've been in New Orleans. Like the culture there more so than any other place I've been. Like it threw me off one time. Like I was I was in line for a restaurant and like the line was kind of long, and then one of the servers came out. He shook everybody's hand. He said, "Look, me," or he introduced the rest of us. I'm like, this is just it threw me off. You know what I'm saying? Because it's
Yeah.
just like I'm just not used to anything like that in Detroit.
Right.
If sometimes it almost, sometimes the attitude may seem like this person feels kind of like where I was at Burger King. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? You annoying me
Yeah, right.
by
Yep.
coming up
Right.
here to my
Exactly.
job.
Right.
Like,
Yep.
what are you doing? You
Right.
know what
Yep.
I'm saying? So it's it's definitely one of those things many people have said like what's going on, but like I say, a blue collar town, like the
Yeah.
standard of what is expected,
Yeah.
and it's not in the ethos of I think like a place like New Orleans where it is a tourist destination.
Right.
I assume these are traditions that are taught from generation to generation of like, look, you treat these people well because this is what keeps us going. Whereas that relationship has
Yeah.
not
Translated. Well, yeah.
connected as much here because at the end of the day, even when people are thinking, oh, I'm gonna get some young people in here and all of that, but it's like, where does that young person? When I was working at Burger King, I was just trying to get some money for like a FUBU shirt.
Right.
This kid wants-
Something to choose.
You
Right.
know what I'm saying?
The prom.
This kid wants Louis Vuitton or something. You know what I'm saying? It's like
Yep.
they like the amount of checks that it takes to get there.
Right. It
know.
Yeah, it definitely presents some challenges, and I was fortunate also to work for these, Fortune 50, Fortune 100 companies that spent a lot of money, right, putting together training systems to train us properly, and whether it was management, financial management, customer service, all those things. So I learned from businesses that spend a lot of time and energy to do it right. And so now I could pass that same thing along. And even if you have someone who, maybe have been doing it for 10, 15 years, if they haven't been trained on the right ways, like I was taught that you don't let the phone ring more than 2 rings, right?
Yeah.
How many times have you called a takeout spot and that phone just keep ringing and keep ringing? But like, it is almost like ingrained in me. If I
places
hear a
where-
phone ring in a restaurant, I'm like, somebody running to grab it because, hey, because you need to let the customer know that they're important, right? Not just letting it ring. Or if you go somewhere and you're standing at the door, at least being greeted by even if they're not ready to seat you yet, at least when you walk in the door within a minute saying, we'll be right with you, or, someone will be right there, or, how you doing today? Give us just 1 second. Just acknowledging that person. How many times do you walk in somewhere and they on their phone? They not even acknowledge as you walk through the door.
So now I got to play the flip side of this too, because in that same culture, people that dine in also, this is a blue collar town on the other side. Like in a place like in South Beach or New Orleans or New York or L.A., you may end up with a $300 tip or something. Sometimes the bill, if it wasn't for that place gratuity, you ain't getting nothing. You know what I'm saying? So like also in that same balance in like the ecosystem of it, because back to that culture,
Right.
what's the take? Do you think that we're hitting that curve collectively based on you talking to a lot of the people that are serving, that people are being as fair as they need to be with tips? And then let me also say this. I mean, I've yet to meet a bartender that says, "Oh man, this was a great night." I mean, it is, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. I think the conversation around tipping has not changed as it relates to
The city.
people tipping well. I will say this: we're having a lot more conversations and understanding around where tipping culture came from and trying to do away with tipping culture as a whole because of where it started and thinking or being
Well,
in a,
break that down. I'm unsure. Enlighten me. Where did tipping
so
culture
tipping
start? It's
started
about to be something horrific from American traditions.
yep
Ain't that something? Ain't that
it
something? Good
started
old
when
America.
the free black men, right, started we were freed and they started working as like servers and things in restaurants, and those restaurant owners did not want to pay them the same what they were paying
The white.
white men that were providing that service, and so they started leaving it up to the customer
Wow.
instead of them saying, well, I'm going to pay you the same. Well, it's the it's the customer, and so they put it on the customer again as a tip, because people are like, well, why they don't tip in Europe? And because it's an American thing, and it was rooted in of course racism,
Wow.
like so many other things.
Like almost every institute. Ain't that something?
Ain't that something?
Ain't
So
that something?
knowing that where it started, but also understanding how unfair it can be, and not so much. I wouldn't even not so much based in racism as much as like bias and prejudice.
Yeah.
Where it could be, you may not like how this girl look. And so you don't tip her as well because she wasn't as cute. She ain't as cute as the, another server. Or,
I'm sure that
you don't like
plays
that this
out.
person, is kind of sassy, right? So like they don't get tipped. Or, even as far as it relates to even like sexual harassment,
Yeah.
and men, might slap a server on her butt or talk or flirt or say something inappropriate. But now as a server, you're like, well, I can't say nothing because my tip is going to be dependent on how I react to this particular. So it's really unfair and it's really inequitable. And so we're having conversations around how can we change this. It's also inequitable as far as who is making the really the a good wage. So as a server, you do have like you can pull full $500 a night on
Yeah.
a good night.
Yeah.
But that cook that's back there making all the food and has been standing on his feet for 10 hours straight, right?
$12 an hour.
He making $12 an hour
Yep.
and can't make no more than that. Like this is
Yeah.
what it is. But he shares in the same like basically responsibility, making sure that customer is taken care of, right? So in those
Some would
instances,
say maybe a bigger.
right, he's actually cooking the food. So do you share in that? Like how do and that's where kind of tip sharing came into play, right? Like we're all going to share in this responsibility of the customer being satisfied and taken care of. So we should all share in either the rewards or the if there's something bad happen, because if your steak didn't get cooked properly, that's not the server's fault, but the server's tip might affect that. But what if it was the cook was affected and how much money they took home based on if that steak was cooked properly?
So these are some interesting conversations, and I didn't even think I would be in this world. But now you're changing the way I think about this. What are the creative ways of looking at this? Because that is like it's so immersed in American culture, which makes sense. Like a lot of stuff.
Yep.
What would happen? Because also this would be like that person that to be like, I don't support tip culture, as a way to be a cheapskate. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. And them saying, I don't support tip culture, and if you want to make more, then go find another job. But who gonna serve you your food? Because you come out to eat because you want to be served, right? You want to have this experience. Well, if everybody that wanted to make more money or got out of this, then you wouldn't have a restaurant to go to, right? So like we got to really think about the realities of that. And some of the things that we're talking about is one, tip pooling, where tips get shared among both front of house and back of house workers. Because another thing was, you have most of your back of house workers, which are black and brown people, so they're making less money. And then your front of house people are, your non-black and brown people, and they have the ability or the option to make more money. So it's even inequitable and really unfair in that too. So there's tip sharing, so that you share in that, you share in the responsibilities as well. And so instead of your circle, I want to say tipped, I can't remember what tipped minimum wage is. I think tipped minimum wage is $5.75, and regular minimum wage is 13 something, I think right now. So when you have a position that's tipped, then your minimum wage is lower because you're going to, of course, make that up in tips. So what I'm seeing restaurants doing is that they'll increase their tipped wage. So instead of $5.75, maybe they'll increase it to $10. but then the tips will be shared. So they're not making as much because they have to share it with everyone else, but they're still getting a higher hourly wage.
And you get more buy-in from everybody involved.
Yep. And then we're also seeing exactly and more working together instead of against each other. Because as a cook, again, why would I go the extra mile for you when you about to take home $500 and I'm still taking home this 100?
I know I'm taking the
And I'm
bus.
sweating. I ain't ate.
Going up in a Benz.
Exactly,
I'm a
right.
bus boy.
Right, and you talking about going on vacation next week because you done made all this money, and I haven't taken one in 2 years. So it allows for people to also work together more and that some transparency. And also what I've seen restaurants that you're gonna see it reflected in the price. And they're going to tell that story about why their price is what it is on the menu, and then you will see, and they will automatically add a gratuity in there, in the price. So it may be 15% or 18% or 20%, but it's automatically added, and then they'll have an additional line that says if you want to contribute to employees' benefits, right, or an employee mental wellness program, then you can add an additional tip, and this will go towards this. But I'm also seeing a lot of restaurants that say there's only so much that we can take on, and still at least be able to, this price to be not so egregious that we can't get customers. But if you believe in what we do and why we do it, then you can also, and if you can, then you can actually add another gratuity on that to be able to help us provide those customers with paid time off and health benefits and things like that. So,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. So with that, we towards the end, and I got just a couple more questions. First off, ecosystem outside of that. We talked a little bit about the restaurants. Definitely talked about the dining experience.
Yeah.
What's going on with the growers and your combination, and what you doing over at Eastern Market right now?
Man, so I love our growers. I love our urban growers. I love talking to people from outside of the city. And when I go, like I just went to New Orleans, actually to do to participate in a fundraising dinner for Grow Dat Youth Farm. So there's a youth farm down in New Orleans, and they do a spring fundraising dinner every year. I'm a board member of Detroit Food Academy, so we were invited to go down and participate. And I loved talking to them and being able to say, like, did you know that Detroit has over 2,200 gardens and farms? And they're like, what? No, like I love being able to like say that, and the shock because people don't like, they don't see Detroit and urban agriculture. Right? They would never tie the two. And so I'm always trying to not only promote our agriculture scene, but when people ask me like what I do, because of course I have my hands on a lot of things, is to sum it up, I'm a connector. I love connecting people to resources. I love connecting people to each other. And so in the food space, in this ecosystem, I love connecting like restaurateurs and chefs or, people that do pop-ups with our local people that produce the food and local growers, and particularly our Black farms and gardens. So I'm always like, whether it's an event or just talking to other chefs and colleagues saying, hey, like, Mama Jerry got these amazing collard greens. Hey, did you know that nurturing our seeds, these tomatoes are like candy, man, I'm telling you. And so connecting those. And so whether it's events that I do, and I make sure I hire or work with other chefs and then introduce them to those farmers that way, or creating events to be able to then connect our growers and our chefs. That's what really brings me a lot of joy. So one of the things that I'm doing at Eastern Market, I do manage the commercial kitchen there. So we have about 18 tenants that utilize that kitchen space. And I do have someone on my staff that is, kind of the kitchen supervisor. So he kind of manages the operations of the kitchen. And what I do is that I'm more of a business coach for these tenants. So I'm able to talk to them about, what's the next step in their business? What is it that I can help them with? How can I help them get there? And so that's really what I do every day with those tenants. And it's really, really been a joy. And it really has been really amazing to be able to, help these businesses just be a resource to them. And whether it is connecting them to urban growers or working with them on their pricing. You know, I have one tenant who's been selling at Eastern Market for over 12 years. And I told him, I was like, it's time to raise your price. Like, these things are not cheap. Raise it. I bet you nobody would, really blink at it. And
And
he did
that's
it. And he was like, yeah, nobody said anything.
yeah, that's part of that same block, like I say, seeing it from the lens of the consumer and not the business. But you need to have that empathy, like you said, about it, but
Yep.
still you can't be digging yourself in the hole.
You can't, right? And you can't you can't think that your competitive advantage, what you mentioned earlier, is to have a cheaper price. You're gonna cheaper price yourself out of a business, right? Like, it don't mean that you it's
That's
about making profit. And so another
yeah.
thing that so that's the main thing that I do. And the other things that I do is, again, being able to provide those resources for not just those entrepreneurs and tenants at the Eastern Market Incubator Kitchen, but for them all over the city. So that's why I teach workshops. The 6-week workshop, there is a cost to that, but all the other ones are free. We meet monthly to have these conversations around issues that are affecting the industry in a way that you can be in community with like-minded, food entrepreneurs. And we have other classes to be helpful, whether it's food safety, right, with Serve Safe, or how to operate in a commercial kitchen, because we do need it. There's so many people in the ecosystem that need it, and for so long there was nowhere for these people to go. And so they were just, again, on this hamster wheel, but really they were persistent in trying to get there. So I'm really grateful that Eastern Market believes in me,
There we
and
go.
the funders believe in me and what we're trying to do. And it has been a really, really beautiful 6 months of seeing people come together and learning, and leaving a 6-week class that I taught and go, there's no more classes? Like, is that it? And saying that they have learned more in those 6 weeks than they have working in a food service management job for the past 8 years. And that they really feel good about, moving forward that business, or seeing someone that from week 1 to week 3 telling me that I got licensed, like I got my food truck license and I'm gonna have my grand opening in 2 weeks. And it's like, if just being in that class wouldn't have given her the confidence to like like she's almost there, but still feeling like, oh, I don't know. But just being in class for 2 weeks, and she was like, I'm gonna do it.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. So that brings us to the end. As a first generation, I gotta ask you a different question. But actually, it's a good question because it's fresh.
Okay.
It's fresh in your mind. Your mama and them moved here. Mama and them.
Mom and them.
So that first month, where were some of the first places you took them?
Oh, Bob Fair.
Ah,
Oh,
okay.
wait, no, you know what? Bob Fair wasn't open yet.
Ah, okay, okay.
They moved. Yeah, Bob Fair was not open yet. So, where's the first place I took them? Probably Detroit Soul was one of them.
Okay.
They had their first location was a takeout location on 8 Mile. I took them there. Probably Ema. Ema's one of my favorite places as well.
Soul food, the noodles.
Love it. Probably Yum Village. Because they were still, where was he? Woodward. Yep.
Okay. So of those places, what's become the place that your mom's like, go there? It's too risky to ask you. It's like people gonna be like, what you mean?
I know.
1,000.
I also took them. I know one of the places I took them, because we all love Mexican food, was Mi Pueblo. My mom loves, she loves Mexican Village and La Jalaciense. Those are her 2 favorite Mexican places. And then now she loves Bob Fair. We all do. It's very reminiscent of the food that we cooked in
Wow.
Louisiana. Very, rice and beans and meat.
Okay. I love it too.
Yep. So those are
Peely
some of...
sauce.
You said what?
The peely sauce. I'm always
Man,
getting that.
every time I go, I literally buy another bottle. I'm like, don't bring me a side. Let me just get the whole bottle, because...
Give me the thing.
Yep. And then actually, my mom actually works for Detroit Soul now. So their sit-down dining location on Jefferson.
Okay.
She's a host, and she's been with them since they opened that location. So they became, they were, again, one of the spots that I went to for soul food. They became my client. I consulted for them in opening up their second location. And then now my mom works there. So it's like family.
Yeah, I like Detroit soul too, because everybody, when Southern Fires closed, they was like, the chefs and then went over there, and I was like, okay, I can
They
like
went
those
the chef
recipes.
there went to Urban Soul.
Okay, Urban Soul.
Yeah, they went to
Detroit
Urban
Soul
Soul.
is on.
Jefferson and Jefferson Chalmers.
That's the one further up. Yeah,
Yep.
I'm thinking about Urban Soul because it's like, okay, they went there. Detroit Soul is solid too, but now that your mom's there, I'm gonna be thinking of it.
Yep, she is. She brings that Southern hospitality as soon as you walk in the door.
Okay.
She's the host.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So with that being said, I'm gonna definitely say one. This is gonna be controversial for your family.
Okay.
All right. What Detroit food do you think goes toe to toe with some of that Louisiana food for some Southern cooking? Where are you like, okay, if you in Detroit for Thanksgiving, it's like, oh, I need some of that. Versus if you in New Orleans, it's like, nah, I need some of that.
Oh, okay, that's hard because, and I will say this, I have someone who her and her husband got married in New Orleans. She spent some time down there, and so she's always coming to like my pop-ups or events and things like that. And she recently messaged me saying that she was having some people from New Orleans come into town. So what like top 5 restaurants would I recommend? And I'm like, like if they're expecting like New Orleans food, they're not gonna find that here. So I can recommend some of my like go-tos, but like if I can't, I haven't found a place that's like the flavor of New Orleans. I will say that I love the beignet truck, right? Like it's delicious. I love Mr. Fish. You know what I'm saying? Like some good fried fish.
Okay.
Like, so places like that. I love, again, Pop-Out Fare because if you're looking for beans and rice and meat that is consistent and has some of those flavors that we're familiar with, then, like, I recommended a place like that. But I was very, I would say in my recommendations, it was more like, these are my fateful 5, but this isn't me looking for
That
the
New
food
Orleans feel.
I'm either cooking myself or my mom will like that.
So you have to get access to said home kitchen to get them meals. So there we go. Until one day you pop up and be like, all right, come on, I gotta crawl. Come on.
I have put the apron down.
Put the apron down. Ain't that something?
Yeah.
All right, well, with that being said, I know they're going to get your lower thirds and all your information. Thank you so much. This was fun. Fun. And we're going to definitely get you back when something else in the Food Network pops up where it's like, hey, people need some information on how to be safe, how to make some money.
Please do.
Get these people's bellies full. All right.
I'm here.
With that, peace.
Thank you.
Detroit is Different is where you get information, artistry, history, music, and even comedy. Detroit is Different, a home for the culture of Detroit. Visit online at DetroitisDifferent.com today.